I believe the best place to be on the agenda is first, so I'm going to call the Department of Audits and Accounts up first. And the only reason you're going first is because John King's not here yet. Give me some numbers.
So I think we're on, I think we're on page 3. Is that correct?
That works on mine, but not everybody gets the same sheet as me.
Okay.
They give me the behind the screen look.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman again and members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning, and we did not meet on the amended, so this is the first time we've been before this committee this year. So I'm Greg Griffin. I'm the state auditor and the department head for the Department of Audits. Glad to go first, so thank you, sir. The Department of Audits has about 250 employees. We have staff located throughout the entire state, and the majority of our folks reside around the Atlanta area. Our, if you look at the tracking sheet, again, it's page 3, we have 4 programs. Program 8.1, it captures all of our audit services, whether they're financial audits or performance audits. 9.1 is our administrative program. 10.1 captures costs related to legislative services that we perform, and 11.1 is tracking our the costs related to the development of the statewide equalized adjusted tax digest. So that's our group of real estate appraisers that put that tax digest together. So our budget is it's a fairly simple budget. It's comprised mostly of personnel costs that make up about 90% of our annual budget, and we are funded mostly by state funds and appropriations. Our budget looks a little different than most of the budgets that I think you'll see later today. So for independence reasons, our department's treated like a legislative agency. So that means that only you, the legislature, can change our budget. So we submit a budget to OPB in the fall, and only you, they cannot make changes to it. Only you, as the legislature, can make changes.
Greg, just a second ago, you mentioned that most of your funds come from the legislature.
Yes, sir.
Where's the other?
So on our tracking sheet, there's about $60,000 that you'll see there. Those are fees that we charge for a annual training program that we put on for local government officers. So it's about $60,000. So that covers the cost of that program, but everything else is we're state funded. So as I said, we're again, we submitted our budget. So what you have before you is our budget request. It's not really the governor's recommendations in terms of what our budget is. So what you also means is that in our budget, you don't see any statewide changes that you're going to see in many of the other budgets later today. And I think most importantly, our budget does not include the governor's recommendation for the $2,000 per employee COLA. Okay. However, our budget does include our request, and we put in a request for additional funds for personnel services to keep our salaries competitive and close to our market competition. And you'll see that I think those funds and that request is labeled funds for retention of personnel. So the total cost of our request is $1.2 million, including overhead costs. And those dollars are all spread between those programs I mentioned earlier. You can see those on lines 8.1, 9.1, and 11.1. Those are the programs that have people in those programs. So our request equates to about a 3% increase to our salary structure. Our plan is or would be to administer those funds on a performance based merit pay increase. That is to keep pace with anticipated market changes at all levels throughout our organization, and allows us to better retain the existing staff that we have, but also to attract the qualified candidates to backfill our turnover. That 3% is consistent with recent compensation studies that we've reviewed and that indicate general industry employers are planning to adjust their salary structures by 3 to 4%. I want to say that I think consistent with what you've heard in the past and what I think you'll probably hear today from other agencies, attraction and retention is a big issue. It's one of the key issues we've all faced in the last several years. With your help, last year we were able to invest in our staff and bring our salary structure much closer to market. And again, for that, I want to say thank you. We're very appreciative of those funds from last year. I think that investment has had a positive impact to our department. Our current turnover rate is less than 5%, and we have averaged around 15% over the past 3 to 4 or 5 years. So that is significant, and it's just not about abating or slowing down the turnover rate, but it's also, you got to look at the other side of the ledger as well. We are actually getting more people in the door and coming in to the department. Our net adds, for example, net adds for the year is approaching a +20, positive 20. That's compared to a -9 last year. So we were down a net 9 last year. We're up +20 at the moment, and so that's a swing of 30. So that's huge. So just to reemphasize, our funding request, again, would allow us to keep pace with the anticipated market changes, maintain the progress that we've achieved over the past year or so. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to take any questions. That is our request for FY24. I'd be glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. One of the things that being new to chairing this side of the appropriations thing, I'll ask you to, okay, we got working on your personnel and that kind of stuff. Tell me a little bit more operationally, and our committee members, why it's important that we have our Department of Audits. What are you doing to solve the problems of the state?
Well, we are an independent and non-biased organization. We perform different types of audits. We perform performance audits and financial audits. The performance audits are very key. Those are ones that you pay a lot of attention to. You ask us to perform a good number of those audits at the end of each session. We get a list of a request list from the appropriation chairs from both the House and the Senate. We get those requests in May, and we return those audit reports back to you for use in the upcoming session. So we are doing the work for you for at least 6 months of the year. We are looking at other operations and other topics for the remainder of the year, and we are looking to make recommendations on efficiencies and effectiveness in how agencies and programs operate throughout the state.
Thank you. Any questions for, yes, sir, Senator Davenport.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me ask you one thing about the departments. When you find fraud in the departments, do you deviate and go straight to the Attorney General, or this is a normal process?
If and when we find fraud, we do additional testing, and depending on the circumstances, we will refer to local authorities, depending on where we find that fraud. It will either go to the Inspector General, local authorities, or the Attorney General's office.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, just quickly, to follow up on that, the Department of, I saw on the news last year, the Georgia Department of, it's the vocational agency. that handles the blind and the visually impaired. When is that, or when is that audit done? Tell me about that.
So you're probably referring to the vocational rehabilitation agency? So,
Yes,
So we audit agencies on a risk-based approach. So we would audit that particular agency is probably, I'd have to go back and check my records. I don't know, we don't go to every agency every
Okay.
year and do a deep dive. We look at risks. We audit agencies as part of the annual ACFR that we audit each year. And so depending on what's significant and what are higher risk, we would audit those particular areas within an agency. So it's not like we go into the Department of Folk Rehab and do a full audit.
Oh, I see. Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I've been trying to help the blind and the visually impaired, and it's about a 250,000 people there, and they really need some help, and I've been trying to help them, and I'm trying to see about these agencies. So I'll talk to you offline about it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Appreciate your report. Mr. Griffin said we'll go next, and the next best place to be in line is next. And so I'm going to ask Commissioner King to step up and talk to us about what's going on in his area. Yeah, you might. Anybody that jumps out of a perfectly good airplane, I'm kind of worried about. Good morning, Commissioner. Good to have
Good
you here.
morning. My apologies. There was a little car fire on 85, and this commissioner doesn't have blue lights anymore.
I was just wondering if you had a fire extinguisher. I went by that
I'd rather
car
take
fire.
my time and let the professionals put out the fire. So, but thank you all so much for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you all so much for allowing me to come and walk through our budget presentation for 2024. I'll get right to it. If you look at page 24 of your tracking document.
If you would, if you can follow the lines instead of.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Line 213.1 under the departmental administration. And you will see 2,000 cost of living adjustments for all eligible employees. I'm going to start from easier to harder parts of our budget, but following the tracking document that you all have. This change will be reflected on all our programs moving forward, and we will be very grateful for this increase, as it will help us in ongoing recruiting and retention challenges that every agency, not just ours, are suffering. Lines 213.2 through 213.4 reflect the annual adjustments in DOAS insurance programs, TeamWorks, Merit System Assessment, and Billings. And again, you'll see these adjustments in every program as we move throughout the tracking document. Line 213.5 shows a $150,000 transfer from other funds to fire safety to fund 4 additional manufactured housing safety inspectors. It's been one of the challenges we faced. Next, we will move to enforcement on page 25, which is made up of our legal team. Line 214.4 shows a transfer of $30,000 in state funds to fire safety towards the same 4 manufactured housing positions that we have vacant.
Yeah. Commissioner,
Yes.
those are in the manufacturing process. That's where those inspectors are.
Inspectors located in local manufacturing facilities, mostly in South Georgia, where they go through the wiring harnesses of mobile homes and making sure that those structures are being built to safety standards, not only for the state, but also federal safety standards, sir.
I believe we restricted, the code doesn't allow for aluminum wiring. That was one of the problems in the past. And
Yes, sir.
It's all copper wire and everything.
And that's one of the things that, especially during, those positions are very so specialized that they're hard to recruit and harder to retain. And so that's where we've had a challenge. And so because of the housing shortage across the state, we're getting more and more activity. More companies want to get started in opening up. And so that's a demand for additional inspectors that we have.
Thank you.
And moving to the fire safety on page 26, line 215.5 shows the transfer of state and other funds from administration to enforcement and insurance regulation for 4 new manufactured housing positions that I previously mentioned. So I'm moving a series of monies around to fund these positions that we have in manufactured housing. By transferring these funds, we're able to fund the much-needed positions at no additional cost to the state. This change is an ongoing part of our plan to move closer to fully staffing the fire safety division of our department. Let me give you some historical context, so you all understand what our process is. When I was first appointed in July 2019 as the fire safety division, I had 98 positions. The following year, the number dropped to 86 because of COVID-related budget constraints. We were given guidance to basically cut our departments, and so we did so. Since then, we have been able to gradually grow the number back to 116 positions via transfers of funds along retained revenue. With 4 new positions funded in today's budget request, that now leaves us 17 positions short, where we needed to be so we could be fully staffed. At full staff, we were able to meet all our required inspections of buildings, elevators, nursing homes, along with arson investigations across the state. As Georgia continues to grow and attract new job creation, we have been forced to prioritize inspections of new construction at current staffing levels, at the expense of inspections of existing buildings under our jurisdiction. We have made this point, and we've been very humble in our process, but understand that we're taking some risks. If you all have provided us state budget positions when requested and allowed us to move funds around so we could retain additional revenues to fill others. Today, I'm asking this committee to consider using any additional available in the FY24 budget to fund at least some of these final 17 positions that I still have open, so we can fully staff this division. Our CFO, Chav Davila, is with me today and has full breakdown of the needed positions and costs, has already shared this information with the committee staff. Moving on to insurance regulation, unless you have any questions, Mr. Chairman, and I can move on to the other parts
okay.
of it. Moving to the insurance regulation on page 27, line 216.5, shows a transfer of state funds to fire safety for the 4 manufactured inspections divisions. In the next section, on page 28, line 217.2, reflects Governor Kemp's request of $92 million to increase and cover the state portion of reinsurance program that we administer on behalf of the governor's office. These funds are passed through our agency and go towards offsetting the high cost of claims on Georgia's individual market. This reinsurance program has already reduced healthcare premiums by an average of 12% statewide, including up to 30% in some of our most rural counties. The reinsurance program has also attracted new carriers to Georgia's market, nearly tripling the number of carriers from 4 to 11. And finally, under special fraud, lines 218.1 through 218.4 show the COLA raises and other annual adjustments. Again, thank you all so much. You provided us the resources that we requested. We've been very humble and very judicious about our request because we realized that we were part of a greater Georgia team, and I'm very appreciative of the support that this committee has given to be able to rebuild our department to the full staffing responsibilities and the tasks that we have according to the rules that you all have passed. Thank you all so much, and I'll stand by for your questions, sir.
Well, Commissioner, I was kind of curious on the reinsurance. If I looked at the percentage that we spend on healthcare reinsurance versus like property casualty insurance, where do you think that $92 million, how much of that's healthcare and how much of it would be property reinsurance type?
I think the majority is, unless Chad can tell me different, I think the majority, a good portion, I would say all of it is into the healthcare for the reinsurance program. And none of it goes into the property. It's all healthcare related.
Does the state have any reinsurance for property and casualty, or are we totally self-insured in that regard?
No, sir. I have no knowledge of any particular activity going on in the property side, sir.
Okay. Questions from the,
This is part of also, the federal government also has a portion that, this is our portion of the total bill on healthcare. So the federal government, obviously, and we're the pass-through agency to be able to administer this program.
thank you. Senator Payne.
Referring to those
Oh.
Referring to those, you said 17 vacancies. How many offices do you have statewide?
One.
Just the one. Okay, that's
Here,
what I just know if you had regional offices.
No,
or,
these employees all operate remotely out of their vehicles with our IT network, and basically they're transmitting constantly the information of the reports, their inspections, citations, all of it at transmitted electronically. So they're operating in the field consistently.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner King.
Thank
Oh,
you.
wait a minute. I got Senator Anderson's over here.
The hard
waving at me.
question. I figured that was
Commissioner,
coming.
good to see you this morning.
Thank you, sir.
Your 4 new guys you want to hire on the mobile home. You said to inspect them for the state level and the federal level?
Yes, sir. And we do
So
get a
that-
portion
Do
of
you
funds
get-
from the federal
you get-
government as well.
that's what
Yes, sir.
I'm getting at. Do you
They
get-
don't pay the whole cost, but they pay a portion of that program, sir.
Okay. Do you have any other employees that would be getting some federal money?
We have some task force. We have an activity with the U.S. Social Security Administration on investigating health insurance fraud, and Social Security fraud, and so they're partially funded also by the feds. And Chad, do you know of anybody else? Do we have?
We get some grants for the reinsurance program as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate your support and your questions and your time this morning.
We'll get you a fire extinguisher for the next trip.
Thank you. You better use it if you can give it to the city of Atlanta, sir.
Next up is the State Accounting Office. Good to have you with us.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman again and members of the committee. And thank you for allowing me to present our FY24 budget recommendation for the State Accounting Office. My name is Geralda Hines, and I'm the State Accounting Officer. SAO has several statewide adjustments that represent the $2,000 COLA, DOS agency premiums, and SAO's portion of the teamwork billing. But I will point out our SAO unique items, starting with 31.1 on page 6. Which eliminates the state general funds of $587,000 provided in the FY22 session for funding of the 5,000 COLA. We are prepared to absorb this reduction through attrition and the use of existing funds. For 31.2, which reflects an adjustment of $1.9 million to assist with the cost of operating and maintaining our current statewide financial and human capital system TeamWorks. This $1.9 million reflects the first increase in the TeamWorks billing in over 6 years to fund non-discretionary items that have been unfunded, the merit increases from prior years, ERS fringe rate increases, the 401 match escalation, PeopleSoft maintenance escalation, and our FY22 $5,000 COLA. So SAO will increase their billings to the other agencies, which you see in the statewide adjustments across other agencies. And TeamWorks represents the largest portion of our budget, funding the support and operation of our current TeamWorks system for personnel, software, and contractual services. For statewide reporting, page 8, 33.3, it is recommended that we use our existing funds for accounting and reporting software. We also are prepared to absorb this cost. The funding for this funds financial systems that we use to help support the preparation of the annual comprehensive financial report for the state. I do want to take a moment to provide an update on our NextGen project. The NextGen project was appropriated $50 million in FY22 to the Technology Empowerment Fund, which resides at Georgia Technology Authority, which provides oversight of the project. I would like to thank GTA for their partnership But SAO is responsible for maintaining and operating the current ERP system, and we're partnering with the Department of Administrative Services to replace the current 25-year-old ERP system with a modern cloud-based solution. The solution that has been selected is Workday, and SAO and DOS will be working with our teams over the next 2.5 years to implement this system. Workday will include a full suite of functionalities for finance, human capital, and procurement. Currently, SAO is in the process and preparing, along with the DOS procurement team, to release an RFP to procure a system integrator who will partner with our teams to help configure and design and install the system. Commissioner Sullivan and I do want to thank all of our different agencies. We had a large number of agencies contributors, over 200 individuals, including our teams, who participated in this process. The new ERP system will enable us to work faster, smarter, and bring Georgia to the forefront of technology. This will not only be a digital transformation, but also a business transformation, changing the way we do business to support our finance, human capital, and procurement team. We will not only have a modern system, but we will be able to provide the governor, the legislators, and other stakeholders uniform, concise, and standardized data to help make informed decisions. Thank you for your time, and I can answer any questions that you may have at this time.
I'm sure somebody's got a hard question. Sounds like you're going to get your lucky day in paradise. Thank you, Ms. Hines.
Thank you.
The government transparent, let's see if I can get this one right. I call it the Ethics Office, but Georgia Government and Transparency and Campaign Finance Commission. Who knows what that could be?
Well, you know, Mr. Chairman, I've got good news for you. The House just sent over 572, which would actually rename it the Ethics Commission again.
Well, thank you. How many times can we do that printing of the new logo?
Well, I'll ask for more money next year for that. But I'm not pitching y'all, but y'all might want to vote on 572 and change that name back. Morning, Mr. Chairman. Happy day 30. We're inching towards the finish line. This is actually my favorite approach presentation because for the first time asking for no money. You'll see on page 8, lines 34.1, 2, and 3, the only changes to our budget are reflected in the governor's COLA recommendation of just over $57,000. We have a small reduction in insurance fees we pay to DOAS, so I guess that's good. If I'm paying less insurance, we must be doing something right. And a small adjustment of $500 and change for merit assessments. But other than that, our budget's flat. I'm happy to answer any questions. Y'all are all pretty familiar with what we do. This is the simplest one I've had so far. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Total number of employees?
Fully staffed, just over 20. We've got a couple attorney positions, and I'm not belabor the point, but like everyone else, we're struggling a little bit to fill those. So the COLA adjustments be appreciated.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Was that doesn't show up in your budget?
No, we've got some interviews right now, so we're hoping to fill those relatively quickly.
Okay.
But hopefully we'll be fully staffed here pretty quick.
Questions? Now's your chance. They ask you a lot of questions. Thank you, Dave.
All right, thanks, Frank.
I'm looking back there. Come on up, Miss Sullivan. You're next. David Armani.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and budget staff. My name is Rebecca Sullivan, and I serve as the Commissioner of the Department of Administrative Services. I do appreciate the opportunity to be here today to speak about the recommended changes reflected in DOAS's FY24 budget. Our budget information is reflected in Section 12, beginning on page 9 of the Senate tracking document. There are several recommended changes to our FY24 budget. The first one is in Section 37.1. It eliminates one-time funding from our base budget in the amount of $1.5 million to purchase annuities for wrongfully convicted individuals. Then lines 38.1, 39.1, 40.1, 41.1, 42.1, and 43.1 all pertain to the elimination of the state general funds provided for the $5,000 COLA in all DOAS programs. That is essentially removing those dollar amounts from our base budget in FY23. With the exception of the HRA, the Human Resources Administration Program, DOAS can manage the cost of the COLA within our existing budget without cutting funds earmarked for other program initiatives. However, all DOAS employees will receive the COLA, and we are working with the Budget Office to ensure that the HRA program is adequately funded. Line 38.2 reduces funds in the amount of $482,000 for intergovernmental contracts. This relates to pass-through funding that's unrelated to DOAS programs. Line 40.2 increases funds by $770,000 to recognize additional revenue from the merit system assessments to implement statewide recruitment and retention initiatives. This funding will allow DOAS to establish a new unit to assist state agencies with the workforce challenges facing the state in recruitment and retention. Line 41.2 increases funds for the risk management program. This relates to the property insurance program, Chairman Gann, that you asked about earlier. DOAS does maintain the property insurance for state properties valued at about $42.5 billion. We have a $1.5 billion of coverage, $1.5 billion tower of coverage. We self-insure the first $1 million of each occurrence, and the rest is funded through excess carriers. So this line 41.2 would allow DOAS to increase our billings for property insurance premiums to state entities in the amount of $30 million. And this would cover the costs of excess insurance and claims expenses and ensure that we have adequate insurance coverage for the state property and contents. With respect to our attached agencies, Judge Malahy is here from OSA and can answer any questions you may have about his budget. And State Executive Director Sean Zia Thomas is here with GTA and can speak to any questions that you might have regarding the Technology Empowerment Fund. And that is all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Committee members, I'm glad to have the best Sullivan up here first. I'm worried about the next one.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Next up is the Georgia Technology Authority.
Good morning, excuse me. Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Sean Zia Thomas, and I'm honored to serve as your state CIO and the Executive Director for the Georgia Technology Authority. On page 17 of your FY24 tracking document, you will see the elimination of the one-time funds for the Next Gen ERP Cloud Modernization Project of $50 million and the All Payers Claim Database of $1.2 million. These amounts were appropriated in the FY23 budget and remains in the GTA's Technology Empowerment Fund. They will continue to be used to support the two projects. We're working closely with our partners at DOAS, SAO, and the Office of Health Strategy and Coordination to successfully implement these projects. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the Technology Empowerment Fund.
$51 million and no questions. Okay.
Thank you.
At least it's coming in the right direction. Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Office of State Administrative Hearings.
Good morning, Mr.
That's a new one.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the committee. My name is Michael Malahy. I'm with the Office of State Administrative Hearings. Our budget recommendations are very simple this year, and they appear on page 15, starting on line 44.1. We have $50,147 for cost of living adjustments, and lines 44.2, 44.3, and 44.4 reflect the common changes, DOAS changes. That's really all we have for our budget this year, no other changes.
Okay, let's make this one easy. Administrative hearings. So you're dealing mostly with personnel, like,
No.
tell me a little bit more about
Okay,
what you do.
Yeah, in 1995, the General Assembly established the Office of State Administrative Hearings with one mission, and our mission is to resolve disputes between state agencies and the public. We conduct hearings at 50 locations statewide every month, and last year we resolved over 30,000 cases. And we have 29 employees, 12 administrative law judges, and 17 administrative staff.
So typically, when a case gets to you, there's lawyers involved, and it's just before litigation, or is it part of litigation?
No, it's part of the litigation. The Attorney General's office represents the state agencies in most cases, or some agencies have their own lawyers. And a lot of people appear pro se from the public part, and so they come to a hearing. We hold an impartial hearing, just like any other court hearing. We take the evidentiary facts, and we issue a decision and send it to the public, to the parties.
Most of your personnel are attorneys?
All 12 administrative law judges are lawyers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your report, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you.
I tell you what, in spite of all my ignorance, I'm going to learn something today. How about the Department of Banking and Finance? Morning. Good to have you here.
Great to be here. Thank you so much. Kevin Hagler, Commissioner of the Georgia Department of Banking and Finance. For today's hearing, we are Section 14, which I believe is page 18 of the package. Our adjustments are the standard fare. It's the $2,000 for employee cost of living adjustments, as well as the pass-through items for things that we're billed for through other agencies. So nothing unique for our agency here. One thing I did want to mention, though, is when we met for the current budget last time, we talked a little bit about the robots, digital workers, and y'all were kind enough to approve what the House had put in at, I think, about $505,000 for us to explore that option for workforce efficiency. One thing I wanted to mention about that, was thank you for that. We're looking forward to doing that, but also we will need roughly $53,000 ongoing to pay for the licensing of the software and adjustments, and that's not reflected in this budget. I hope that the House would include it, but we're kind of out of sequence here, so I'm not sure exactly how that works, but that would be one thing that we would need in order to utilize the funds that you previously approved.
I'll just ask Martha Grace, have you got that?
Writing it down.
Okay.
Thank you.
See where we can go with that.
That'll be all.
Questions? Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate everything.
Next up is the Georgia Tax Tribunal. Anybody representing the? Okay, I guess we can eliminate them off the state budget. The Georgia Commission on Equal Opportunity. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. How are you guys?
Morning.
My name is Alana Cross, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Georgia Commission on Equal Opportunity, Office of the Governor. It's a pleasure to be here with you all this morning. Our agency is charged with the mission of enforcing the Georgia Fair Employment Practices Act and the Georgia Fair Housing Law to ensure equal treatment of all Georgians and safeguard them from discrimination in both housing and employment. The budget recommendations for GCO begin on page 22 of the Government Operations Committee tracking sheet and ends on page 23. So today I'll reference section 181, specifically 181.1 through 181.3. For line item 181.1, the budget recommendation is for an increase in funds to provide a 2,000 cost of living adjustment for all full-time benefit-eligible state employees effective July 1, 2023 to adjust agency recruitment and retention needs. As with many agencies, GCO continues to experience challenges with recruiting and retaining our qualified workforce. For line item 181.2, the recommendation is for an increase in funds to reflect an adjustment of agency premiums for the Department of Administrative Services administered insurance programs. And for line item 181.3, the budget recommendation is for an increase in funds to reflect the adjustment in merit system assessment billings. This concludes my presentation for fiscal year 2024, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have at this time. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. I just want to make sure our committee members, you know, when we look at numbers, we look at some really big numbers. We were just talking about $92 million on another agency, and we're talking about a couple $100 on some of these. I'm like, thank you very much. We won't get down in the weeds on a couple $100.
Thank you.
How about the Office of State Inspector General? Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name is Nigel Lang. I'm the Interim State Inspector General. I've been doing this job temporarily now for about 30 days, so I appreciate all the difficult questions that you may have. If I could just tell you briefly a little bit about our agency. We're a very small agency, 11 members of our staff at full strength, one vacancy right now, which is the former Inspector General, Scott McAfee. We work out of the Twin Towers across the road. Our budget is divided into two programs, investigations and administration. We have a total budget of pretty small, as you were saying, Mr. Chairman, in relation to the other agencies. $1.5 million is our total budget. Approximately 95% of that is personal services. The line items that I would like to walk through with you, 188.1 to 188.3, the COLAs, the DOAS insurance and merit system adjustments that you're all familiar with. Line 188.4 is a $271,000 reduction. Last year, House Bill 960 did not pass, but the funding that was allocated for that in the amount of $271,000 is being reflected here in this year's governor's recommendations as a reduction. I will let you know that this year Senate Bill 59 is essentially the same bill from last year. It's passed the Senate. If that is to become law, there is an additional ask of $228,000 that you'll see. It's not in the governor's recommendations, but we've been in contact with the Senate Budget and Research Office about that. I just wanted to draw your attention to that. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll gladly entertain them.
Yeah, just one of the things I'm going to keep my theme of. Tell me a little bit more about what the office does as far as
our mission. Yeah, so primarily fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption. Combating that in the executive branch of state government is what we're focused on. We're also the lead investigative agency for sexual harassment in the state. So we coordinate the sexual harassment investigations with the passage of Governor Kemp's executive order in 2019. Fraud is our number one objective in combating that in state government.
Thank you. Questions? Today's your lucky day, Nigel. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mr.
your
Chairman.
report. And you know, I'm not sure where we're going to go, but I'll just pick on my former colleague, Bruce Thompson. He's not here. He texted me earlier this morning and said he's not coming. And I'm like, it's typical. Said those darn former senators, you can't get much out of them. But we do want to know if there's a good report coming from our Department of Labor. Worried about our commissioner. Get a big state agency like that, and he's telling me there's something else that he'd rather do than come to see us.
Oh, that's not the case at all. He sends his regards. We had a mission-critical meeting on behalf of the department this morning, and so he apologizes for his absence. And my name is Ethan Stiles. I serve as the Chief Operating Officer at the Georgia Department of Labor, and I will be walking through Section 32, which starts on page 29 of your budget handbook. I'm going to hit the three highlights. You'll have lines 231.1, 232.1, and then 233.1. And we have three different buckets that our collective budget goes into. We have our administrative budget, which that office really supports our labor markets and unemployment insurance divisions within the agency. 232 highlights the labor markets, their collective budget, and then the third bucket being 233 is the unemployment insurance. The administrative budget is about $20 million a year. $1.75 million comes from the state general fund. Labor markets, $1.38 million, which is their entire budget, exclusively comes from the federal government. And then unemployment insurance, roughly $30.2 million of total allocation, of which $4.4 million comes from the state. Our collective budget is $50.5 million now, and the state contributes about $6.1 million of those dollars. So 12% of our collective budget is state. The remaining 88% is from the federal government. In a request letter on February 10th, we outlined an ask, about a $1.77 million cost of living increase for our employees. You will see in our ads on lines 231 through 234 a total addition of about $7,000 total dollars, some of that money of which is added for a COLA. We would be asking for that COLA to be extended so we can offer that to all staff. These services we provide in 41 career centers. We have two main buildings, which we call our main campus, Sussex, and the CWC, which houses the brunt of our employees. Currently, our UI trust has about $1.3 billion in it. We process about 270,000 some odd unemployment insurance claims per year. We are maintaining an unemployment rate of 3.1% currently. Our current staff size is 949 people as of this morning, and that is about as general an overview of our department as I can give. So happy to answer questions of the committee.
Senator Halpern.
Good morning.
I just didn't catch the number that you said on your UI trust.
Yes, we have $1.3 billion currently in the trust.
You got an idea how many of your employees got transferred to the technical college school?
It's still in flux. So right now we were looking, I think some of the earlier projections would be we would require to move about 400 some odd employees, of which have moved, I would say there are roughly 250 to 270 that still are somewhat stationed at DOL. And so in terms of what has collectively moved, roughly 100. I can get that exact number to your office later today.
Kind of curious, what's that do to your office space? One of the things that we see a lot of teleworking and such stuff, and right. Whether it's state government or private sector, I'm kind of curious there. But one of the things, Ethan, I'd like to know is I'll drive around the state and I see Department of Labor buildings in different locations. Are those buildings that we lease, we own? Do you have if you can give me some data on that? I'm always curious what's going on with our state facilities, and as we shifting employees from one agency to another, how's that change in that office space?
Yeah, and so just off the cuff, we run basically 50% owned, 50% leased. I can have the exact locations that are owned and leased. I can send that to your office and to members of the committee later today. In terms of what it does to our without really digging and going into the weeds, historically, many of our staff were funded in a hybrid manner. So half of which were funded through, or half of many of our staff's collective salaries were funded through the Wagner-Pizer grant, which has moved to the Technical College System of Georgia. The other half of their salaries for many of our career centers would have been funded through the unemployment insurance grant. And so what has that done to our staff? Well, it's kind of left us in a flux because obviously if we have a person that is 50% funded by the Wagner-Pizer grant, if they are not transferred to TCSG, those employees have maintained status with GDOL. And so I can have exact staffing counts for all of our Career Center facilities. All of our Career Centers are open, and our staff with at least 2 individuals and 2 to 9 individuals in each. And so I can give you complete breakdowns of that later today as well.
I think you mentioned 941 employees.
949 as of yesterday morning.
Okay. Those that are going to TCSG, whatever, if I can get that right, Technical College School, the System of Georgia. Where are they in that picture of the 949?
That is something that we're actually meeting with the governor's office and with the Technical College System tomorrow to try to refine that number. When that meeting concludes, I'm happy to send you what the final number count that we come up with internally.
Most importantly, send it to our hardworking staff. Senator Davenport, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One quick question. Is there still a backlog on unemployment claims? I know you said you had almost 149 employees, a little under 1,000.
There is still a backlog of unemployment claims, but our UI director we have all sat down. We have identified kind of the path ahead to remediate all of those claims, and our plan is to have every claim related to the pandemic basically rectified by October 1 of this year. So we should be 100% good on all pandemic-related claims later this year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Believe it's maybe Senator Anderson.
Good morning, sir.
How are you?
How many vacancies do you have?
I can get that number to you later today. We have initiated a hiring freeze, and so we were not considering vacancies. Ultimately, have not really been considered in this process. I can have that number to you later today as to if we were fully funded, what our vacancy count would look like.
Okay.
Seeing no other questions, said have a great day, but tell the commissioner that we really want to see him in our budget meetings.
I absolutely will, and it's always a pleasure to sit in front of this committee. Thank you.
Next up is the Department of Revenue. One of the first things I learned in dealing with local government is where's the cash register? I'm hoping that y'all are it. Is all these other asks that all these other people have? If you don't have the money, we got a problem.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we're it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Frank O'Connell, and I'm honored to join you for the first time today as the State Revenue Commissioner. And I'm accompanied by Ken Nash, our Chief Financial Officer, as well as Austin Gibbons, the department's Director of External Affairs and Communications, and Joe Snowden, our Legislative Affairs Specialist. The Department of Revenue seeks to be a customer-facing, solutions-oriented department that fairly and impartially enforces tax, alcohol, and motor vehicle laws that affect every Georgian. Now, the department's fiscal year 24 general appropriations recommendations include very few changes that don't impact every other agency. Those changes are on pages 32.
Just for the numbers.
304.1. And that is the $2,000 COLA for full-time benefit eligible employees to assist us with agency recruitment and retention needs. 304.2, the adjustment to agency premiums for Department of Administrative Services insurance programs. 304.3, the TeamWorks adjustment, and 304.4, the adjustment in the merit system assessment billings. And those adjustments are spread throughout our 10 programs. The only one that is agency specific to us at the Department of Revenue is 307.5, and that is an increase in funds in accordance with the fiscal 22 firework excise tax collections pursuant to House Bill 511.
Yep, help me with that. So what local government services are included in that?
Well, the department, upon collecting and remitting the fireworks excise taxes, 5% will go to local governments, 50% to the Trauma Care Commission, and then 45% to the Georgia Firefighter Standards and Training Council.
Okay.
I'll touch very briefly on some updates pertaining to the amended 23 budget recommendations for property tax relief grants and the progress of House Bill 162, this year's surplus tax refund. The department has distributed our preliminary tax relief guidance to ACCG, GMA, the Appropriations Chairman, the Tax Committee Chairman, and caucus chairs in both chambers and both parties. And any member that's interested will make sure that you receive a copy. And it will be released to the press and the public when the governor signs House Bill 18. Additionally, House Bill 162 has passed the House and been assigned to the Senate Finance Committee. And to plan ahead, the department has already updated our surplus tax refund guidance online to clear up any confusion for taxpayers between this refund and the House Bill 1302 refund from last year. So once the governor signs the budget, we'll update the press, public, and General Assembly on ways that taxpayers can check the status of the refunds and check their eligibility. And I would like to note that most refunds last year were out the door by July 2022, and we intend to build on that success this year. I'd like to thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I stand ready to answer any questions you may have.
Some people tell me it's always good to be frank. Well, we got a late arriving question.
I don't have a question, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a comment.
I'm sorry, we cut that off about a week ago.
But Commissioner, I just want to thank you for what your department has done. I've done called you 2 or 3 times, and you were Johnny on the spot, got the situation solved. And I mean, I just want to appreciate what you do. Thanks.
Thank you very much for those kind words, sir.
I'm just going to tell you, if you ever do anything with Jason Today, letting him go, you can forget any kind of future funding. Today, he makes my life a lot easier when I have constituent concerns. So
I will never be more popular than Jason.
I'm going to tell you. If you never talk to him, it's like talking to the Shell answer man. So thank you for your report today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee.
How about the State Properties Commission and Georgia Building Authority?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for having us today. I'm Gerald Pilgrim. I'm the Chief of Staff for to Marty Smith, the State Property Officer for the Properties Commission and Building Authority and the Finance and Investment Construction Division. He could not be with us. He is down in Savannah on a project this morning, but want to thank y'all for the 24 budget, we're very fortunate. We don't have anything really that we're asking for in that one. It's Properties Commission is funded from proceeds from the Building Authority. So anything on the adjustments will be able to be absorbed in there. We've looked at that. I believe we were asked to come in today. I want to thank the committee and the Senate for their support for some stuff that happened in the amended budget. Approved the money for the tear down, $20 million for tearing down the facilities that will help throughout the state of Georgia, $15 million for state agencies, $5 million for the Board of Regents properties, so thank y'all for that. Also for the statewide assessment for the prisons and Department of Juvenile Justice. Thank y'all for that support. One of the things too I think we wanted to discuss was a little bit on the assessment, kind of give you a little bit on the capital assessment for the legislative office building and for the Capitol Hill, and for the state capitol. So there was $500,000 that was put into that budget to do that assessment. It was actually added by the House. We had some discussions with them. When we did the plan of consolidating everyone out of 2 Peachtree into onto Capitol Hill, we did an assessment of 2 Peachtree and all of the properties. We excluded the Capitol and the legislative office building at that time because we knew what was already in those spaces. We weren't going to be putting any agencies in those spaces. But one of the things that we've seen is, need for better meeting spaces, need for better constituent spaces, office spaces. It's been a long time since the Coverdale building has been renovated. There's still some major needs that need to be done in the Capitol. So we needed to look at a real focused approach to that. So this assessment will be one that will involve members of the General Assembly will be involved in it, members of the staff, the executive branch, with the governor's office who's located in the Capitol, and also the Secretary of State's office, kind of what is their needs, what can we accommodate, can it be accomplished by doing some major renovations to the legislative office building? Do we need to look at a future plan for having another legislative office building and repurposing this space for other agencies that aren't on Capitol Hill? So I think that would give us like a roadmap, kind of like what we've had when we did the assessment for 2 Peachtree, kind of like what we're doing for the assessment for corrections and DJJ. Now we're going to kind of do one and take care of Capitol Hill completely. So welcome any questions or comments on that one or anything else that we have going before us.
Thank you, Mr. Pilgrim. One of the things that I think Chairman Tillery had commented when you were talking about raising a lot of the older buildings, abandoned buildings, those that are a problem, putting emphasis on the regents in that regard because we're paying on a percent of the buildings.
Yes, sir.
You said $5 million's going into that.
Yes, sir. $5 million is dedicated to go to regents, and they'll work with us helping identify the priorities for them.
Is there more stuff that we could tear down and cut another level of expense?
There's always some more buildings. The original request was for $35 million. When we did our full assessment, it was 70. We identified of agencies that responded to us when we did our fullest ask for how many we had. We had about $72 million in requests from agencies for facilities to be torn down. OPB put in about half of that, at $35 million. Then we've kind of reduced it. That would probably be what we could cover in a year, but I would think if this program is successful, we will start doing the demolition. I think you'll start seeing some major demolition going this summer. And by next year, we'll be able to report back to y'all the success, what we're really seeing in that. And also, by putting this out in the way we've done it, similar to some other programs, we'll be making sure some of the, when we're doing the tear downs, it's not going to be just one master contract where one contractor gets all the work. We're going to be looking in the local communities where the buildings are to try to bring in qualified contractors that are there to help us do that. So hopefully do a little bit of reinvesting the money back into the communities where these projects are, because a lot of these buildings are throughout the state.
Thank you. Some of my colleagues that share the Suite 121 would sure love to see some access easement there.
That's one of those things. So hopefully by Friday of this week, our at least temporary approach to try to come up with a measure to see if it'll work will be installed. So hopefully that system will be in place by Friday of this week. It took a little while to get everybody in. I think we've got to see if that works. If that doesn't, then maybe we can kind of come up with a better, more approachable plan and then look at how we can configure things a little bit better.
Thank you.
I know that's been difficult for you, sir.
Yeah. Appreciate your report.
Thank y'all very much.
Wait, we got a late arriving question.
Senator.
The buildings you're talking about taking down, would that be surplus property or?
There could be some that could be surplus properties. Most of the buildings, there were only a small number, and I'm going by my memory, and that's always a bad thing, but I think there are only 2 or 3 that were properties that could be declared surplus and that they could be removed from the state rolls completely, like to be sold, or most of it would be on campuses of like corrections, university systems, where we're probably just the land would be redeveloped at some other time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
you very much. Next up is our Secretary of State.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. I'm Gabriel Sterling. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. He apologizes for not being here. He had a previously scheduled breakfast that he could not move. We tried, but we couldn't get it done. We are in section 43 on y'all's tracking, and we'll start with corporations. As has been noted before, this is fully funded internally. There are no state dollars to go towards this. I do want to note that we do have the money to absorb the COLAs plus the Teamworks and Merit System increases for the 48 positions, which is approximately $162,172 for that part of the agency. We will continue to ask for the $2.8 million to replace our aging E-Corp. We have been getting through the renewal stage right now. We had a couple of technical hiccups. It is an older system now. It's pushing 8.5 years old. And we do need to get that $2.8 million to replace that system if at all possible.
Tell me a little bit more about that system.
It is E-Corp. It was built out about 8.5 years ago. This is what we do for the registrations of the LLCs and corporations, foreign and domestic entities. We have about 1.1 million of those right now. And we're in the renewal period, which is our heaviest traffic time. So we're running into some memory issues, some performance issues. Older software starts to age out. So we were trying to stay ahead of, we don't want catastrophic failure, then replace. We want to replace before you reach that point. So that's why we put that in our initial ask at the joint committee meeting back in January. Let's see. On elections, we of course take the full adjustments, and we did want to thank the committee and the General Assembly itself for supporting the $900,000 in mid-year budget, $250,000 for the repository of ballots, and $650,000 for improvements to the voter registration system. We will continue to request the $4 million for the UPS replacement. I feel like we didn't make this clear enough. This is a necessity. This is not a luxury. It's something that needs to happen. The timing of it now could potentially increase costs. We will work to avoid that. And one of the things, let me get the rest of this and I'll go for one thing on elections. We do request again to replace the 2 personnel we lost to the state election board. That cost to be $172,160, and that was done in the mid-year budget and continues through the continuation budget, obviously. For our new poll pads to work, these are going to be cellular-based poll pads using Verizon wireless plan. We need $550,000 for the 24 elections. This is what's used to reduce the lines, especially in the early voting section, because it cuts the check-in time from about a minute and 45 seconds to about 45 seconds. So it's a very important thing, and this was done at a time before the counties could have budgeted for it. And the plan is for the state to use it for this first year and then move that cost to the counties moving forward, because now they have time to plan for it. They did not have time to plan for it before. And we do have our continuing request for the SCB so they can have some staffing which I already received, and then the support dollars for those staff, travel, per diems, which they've never asked for before, they're now going to be receiving, a website and integrations with our investigation system, because essentially the SCB is the arbiter of the initial items to coming out of investigations. So those are the specific things. But one thing I want to talk about elections moving forward. Using the HAVA dollars for several years and coming out of 2018 through 2020 through 2022, we have drawn down those dollars. They are not coming at the rate they were before. We are in a different environment in elections now. We were very fortunate to have a good DRE system that served our state for 20 years that did not require a lot of capital investment once it went. We are now in a different environment, because of the political environment, the lawsuit environment, the cybersecurity environment. We're going to have to do investments essentially every year at some level, and I don't know what they are. We've been leaning on the federal government to help do those investments for us to a very good extent. I mean, we've probably spent, between CARES and HAVA, $22 million over the last 4 years. But the state is going to have to be able to be in a position to step up, and we were doing our best to keep y'all informed of what we're going to need and when we're going to need it. But it's just an environment we're going to be in regardless of who's in charge. So I just want to lay that foundation. That's not specific to anything moving forward other than these two things. On investigations, we will do our ask again that the population has increased. We are down 2 investigators when Secretary Raffensperger began in office. We have 569,000 licensees. We have more than, I think, about tenfold increased number of elections investigations we have to do, given, again, the environment. So 4 investigators, 2 investigator 1s and 2 investigator 2s. These are post-certified investigators for a total cost of $380,106 to pay for those. The Office of Administration, they're just doing the COLAs, no additional asks. Professional licensing boards, they are obviously doing the additional COLAs, plus in line 318.5, you see the $185,000 being transferred to our friends, the professional engineers and land surveyors boards. We're giving it to Sully and them.
They look like they're happy.
I'm sure they'll ask for more, sir. As I mentioned a moment ago, we have 569,000 licensees in the state. When Secretary Raffensperger was elected, we had about 478,000. The population is increasing. The number of licenses is increasing. Since Secretary Raffensperger was elected, we have added, on top of people leaving, over 67,000 additional nurses. We are at a record level right now of licensing and applications. So we are at a minimum asking for 2 additional nursing analysts. We would like to see more analysts, but we understand that all these budgets are about trade-offs. Those are our most important. And that would be about, I'm sorry, I had that number. I think it's 158,000. I had it written down. I thought I did it. I lost that one. I'll get you the specific on that later. The rest of this budget goes to our attached agencies, and I see that the land surveyors here, as well as our friends from the Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission. They will have the specifics on those items. Outside of that, we stand ready to answer any of your questions.
Looks like it might be your lucky day, Mr. Sterling.
I was wearing my bulldog tie for that effect, sir.
Yeah.
Go Dogs.
Next up is the Georgia Real Estate Commission. And I don't think anybody's here. The Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis. Boy, there's a fun job.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members, staff. Hope everybody's doing well today. Appreciate the opportunity to come and present to you. I'll give you a brief overview, and then I'd like to talk to you about what you see in the recommendations for the budget, as well as the Commission's ask for the budget. I appreciate the time and opportunity, appreciate the staff support, good communication to get us in the door and talk to you today. The Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission is an independent state agency. We have 7 members that serve as the regulating body for the commission. 3 of those, including the chair, are appointed by the governor. 2 are appointed by the lieutenant governor, and 2 are appointed by the Speaker of the House. Appreciate the service of the members. They are volunteers. They're not involved with the industry, and they serve in their own time. They do get a per diem for serving. However, they get a lot of wear and tear out of their per diem to serve on the commission. So I just want to say thank you publicly for their service as well. The commission is administratively attached to the Georgia Secretary of State's office, as Director Sterling previously mentioned. We do not receive any funding through their budget or as a part of our budget. We do receive the three-legged stool of services as a part of that attachment. The Secretary's office provides budget and procurement support as well as human resources support for the commission, and we certainly appreciate the work that Secretary Raffensperger and his staff provide for us in those three areas. Beyond that, we do not receive funding or services or support from the Secretary's office. We also, unlike the Secretary's office, do not receive any grant funding, pass-through funding, or retained revenue. We are entirely dependent upon appropriations from the General Assembly for our budget. As you can see in the tracking sheet, we are in Section 43 as an attached agency. The information that you see from the governor's recommendation appears at the bottom of page 44 of 48 in the document and continues on to the top of the following page, 45. You can see the increase in funds that are consistent with the other state agencies. That includes the $2,000 cost of living adjustment for full-time benefit eligible employees. And again, at the top of the following page, you can see the increase for the merit system adjustments. And Mr. Chair, it's really important for us to talk a little bit about the history of funding for the commission as well as what we do. We are the state's regulatory compliance agency for medical cannabis. Currently, we have 2 licensees in the state, 2 production licensees, one located in Adel, Georgia, and the other located in Glenville, Georgia. Each of those licensees, through the passage of Senate Bill 195, is eligible to apply for 6 dispensing licenses, and the commission has a proposed rules hearing scheduled for this afternoon, which includes regulations for those dispensaries that I referenced. The additional licenses that the commission has regulatory oversight for are 4 production licenses in the Class 2 category. Those licenses are currently involved in litigation. Appreciate our partners at the Office of State Administrative Hearings. I heard your question for Chief Judge Malachi about what they do, and certainly the commission has kept OSA busy this year, and the commission appreciates the funding that this committee as well as the chamber across the rotunda providing funding for our OSA hearings for the protest process that was a part of our licensing requirements through the Georgia's Hope Act. The commission has asked for additional funding for staffing. And just to give you a quick history lesson on the funding for the commission, as well as where we're about to go in a really great big hurry, the commission is actually in its 5th fiscal year. The first fiscal year was FY19, and that was prior to my arrival and hire as executive director for the commission. The commission was only appropriated $225,000 in that fiscal year. The following year, when I was onboarded, the commission's budget was actually cut. As a result of that, in order to keep this commission alive and operating and go forward with this RFP licensing process, the commission was only able to hire 1 staff, and we had to do some salary reduction. The commission members did not accept per diem payments for those first 2 fiscal years. That was to make sure that we got this process started, Mr. Chairman, and I'm certainly happy to report, again, those 2 licenses for Class 1 have been issued. We anticipate that the Class 2 licenses will be issued by the end of the current fiscal year. That's FY23. So the ask for 24 is to get funding for the commission. Currently, we do not have legacy software. Currently, we only have 6 staff members. Currently, we do not have vehicles. Currently, we do not have standard office equipment like a copy machine, things that normal state agencies would have. We do not have administrative staff to answer the phone or to provide scheduling or to take care of providing packets or information or to respond to the public. The ask that we have is minimal in the categories that are normal for a state agency. We've only asked for enough funding to provide a space where field-based staff can come to the office. We're housed at 7 MLK, that's the agriculture building. We have 1 office suite currently. We've asked for enough space to allow 3 or 4 people to sit in a conference room when they need to come and have training for a staff meeting here in the Atlanta area. And we have asked for 11 positions. I won't belabor the point, but I'll tell you what those positions are very briefly. We've asked for some additional attorneys. Currently, we have 1 attorney on staff. In this fiscal year, in the current quarter, the commission has had 37 active lawsuits. I don't have the statistics, Mr. Chairman, on how many lawsuits other state agencies face, but I suspect that we're at the top of the pile in terms of the number, and certainly number per staff level. We appreciate the support that the Attorney General's office has provided to us through this process. However, it's our staff that has to represent our agency as well as our agency's posture as it relates to the litigation against the state. The Attorney General's office represents us when we go to court. We've also asked for support staff to provide the briefing support necessary for the level of litigation that the agency has experienced. So that includes some ask for paralegal support as well for those attorneys. Additionally, we will expand licensing. You heard me mention that we have 2 production licensees currently who are entitled to, by law, apply for up to 6 dispensing licenses. So 2 production plus 6 each for their dispensing licenses. We have a current footprint of 18 licenses. Once the Class 2 licenses are issued, they will also be eligible to apply for their 6 dispensing licenses. And so that will add an additional 24 licenses to the footprint that the Commission has responsibility for. As you may be aware, the House did pass some legislation in the current session that expands that number beyond the current footprint. Currently, our total footprint is 42 licenses. If the bill as proposed that's come over to the Senate from the House were to pass, that would actually increase the total number, that's production plus dispensing, to right at 100 licenses that the Commission would have regulatory compliance oversight responsibility for. So we've asked for funding for vehicles. We appreciate the funding for the 1 vehicle that the Senate approved in amended fiscal year, but I want to give you the information that's really important to know about those vehicles. The manufacturer that we have ordered from is Ford Motor Company. Currently, there is a minimum 1-year lag between the time that the state pays for that vehicle and the time that the Commission receives the key and we can drive that vehicle back to the office from the dealership. So the ask is really important in that we know we're going to have regulatory oversight for a number of licenses. Currently, the only thing that we have to utilize is either personal vehicles or rental cars through state travel requirements. My concern for that is for the staff at the Commission. Really important to note that in a compliance situation, an investigation, if there's a recalled product or there's a complaint which requires us to collect evidence, that could involve some regulated substances coming into state's custody and sending those to a laboratory for testing to ensure that the limits are in compliance with the law, or to make a determination if they've had a negative impact on patient safety. I don't want my staff to transport that in the same vehicles that they use to drive their spouse, their child, their grandchild to church, mass, the synagogue on Sunday. It's just not right. Asking for funding for vehicles for our agency, and it's really important that they have that so that all of that activity that's a requirement for their position with the state of Georgia takes place in a state vehicle. Really a crucial component there. So we've asked for the vehicles and we've asked for inspectors so that we can adequately regulate the number of licenses that we have responsibility for. Final note, we've asked for some staff to help us to regulate our laboratories, as well as the seed-to-cell tracking data that comes into the agency. We will receive a very high level of data, not only in the application bucket for which we've asked for funding, but also in the data storage and housing and security category. And we've asked for some funding for some IT staffing as well. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for letting me go through a little more amplified version than what you have in your tracking sheet, but it's really critical to note that to date, the Commission has never been fully funded. The original fiscal note for the Commission was $1.2 million. As you can see on the tracking sheet in front of you, we're still parked at about $900,000. I respect what the other agencies have brought to you, asking for additional millions of dollars, but we just haven't been funded at the level that we should have been funded at to begin with, and we humbly ask for your support so that we can make sure that we regulate this industry correctly. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield to questions that you have. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you this morning.
Somehow or another, I figured Senator Anderson would have a question.
The two license you already got out there, when are they supposed to be up and running? I mean, by what day?
Appreciate the question, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate your help and support in previous fiscal years to help us continue to do a better job here at the Commission. Appreciate that. The licensees in committee testimony in the current fiscal year have indicated that they have the availability and are prepared to go to market with product in the April-May window. And so we anticipate that as soon as the Commission's rules become effective, they'll become effective somewhere between the first and second week of April if the Commission votes to adopt those. We anticipate that as soon as those rules are effective, that the current two production licensees will be very eager to submit their applications for a dispensing license, and that they will want to open those as soon as the Commission can vote to approve them. So we anticipate that again to be towards the end of April or the first part of May, when there are products on the shelf that patients can go and lawfully buy that are on the low THC registry with the Department of Public Health.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I guess one of the questions when you look at where your agency goes long-term, I'm kind of wondering, why don't, you're already housed in the ag building next door. Why don't we put you under ag? They're good at growing stuff, and it seems like we're having a problem getting to production. So would that be the right thing to migrate you towards the under the Department of Agriculture some which way?
I appreciate the question, Mr. Chairman, and I'll just respond and say I think that the General Assembly was wise in the structure for the Commission. Again, the chair plus two members are appointed by the governor, two by the lieutenant governor, and two by the speaker. The net effect of that is that in an industry that is well-funded, highly competitive, and highly litigious, I think that takes the back off of any one elected official. That helps, I think, on the liability side. I think it helps on the temptation side, too, so that no person gets under the pressure of a lot of money to not follow the law. We've tried very rigorously to follow what the HOPE Act has outlined, and I think the Commission serves a great structure for making sure that that's done, spreading it across so that there's no direct influence in what happens with the outcome.
Okay. No other questions? I appreciate your report, Andrew.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
As bad as I hate to say it, I think we're down to the Professional Engineers and Land Surveyors Board. I don't know where that's going to go.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name's Russ Pennington. I am a member of the Professional Engineers and Land Surveyors Licensing Board. I'll have to say, as former state employee, I never had the pleasure of asking for money from an appropriations committee, and never thought that being a board member I'd be in this position, but we're like starting a new business and starting from scratch, and so fortunately it takes money to do that, and hence the reason we're here. We're looking at line item 321.100 on page 45 of the budget. There's not a lot of detail. It's just a line item for $1,027,000 in that. And frankly, none of the board members really know where that number came from or what goes into it. As we went through that, we were looking at other states and similarly sized states, similarly sized licensing boards, and looking at number of professionals and whatnot. And we kind of kept coming back to the state of North Carolina. And so, being engineers and land surveyors and being attentive to detail, we tried to develop a budget the best that we possibly could. And so really North Carolina was the one that we kept coming back to. There are about 25,000 licensees, which is almost identical to the state. So our board regulates professional engineers, engineers in training, structural engineers, professional land surveyors, and land surveyors in training. And so as we're looking at what we need to develop, it's rent for a building for an office space, the computers that go into that, the software that we can process it, web services so that the regulated community and those that want to report the regulated community can interface with it, from renewals to applications to complaints, et cetera, and then a staff. And so knowing we were going through this process, we did an analysis last year. So House Bill 476 created the administratively attached but independent licensing board. And after that bill passed, our licensing board made a motion and passed a fee increase. So we quadrupled the licensure fees on the individuals. And in terms of the companies that we also regulate, we increased those from $10 a year to $100 a year. And with that, the revenue that is expected to be projected is collected towards, I guess, fourth quarter of calendar year 22, but it was just under $3 million. And so try to get started. We appreciate the $300,000 that was added to the amended fiscal year budget. And then looking at where we are, we're hoping to be able to get $2.5 million total. So from the $1,027,000 that was included in the governor's budget, we're asking for approximately an additional $1.5 million. That would get us fully staffed from 0 up to a total of 9. That would be an executive director, a deputy director, an executive assistant, IT manager to make sure we're going on the day-to-day, a couple of customer service representatives to be able to process the complaints, the applications, the renewals from other states, and then an investigations team, both surveying and engineering, which would include kind of the law enforcement side as well as technical professionals that know what to look for throughout the complaints. Kind of modeled what we did as well from the North Carolina budget with the real estate commission, so we're consistent in terms of going through with IT expenditure, regular operating expenditures for the state, and we've got some contractual services for website, AG's services on the legal side with processing, and then external consultants for engineers and land surveyors. I won't get into the weeds more than that, but happy to answer any questions.
I think you tripled your fees for your members that are licensed, so that you could cover all this expense at no expense additionally to the taxpayers.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And I'll just add that Sunday afternoon we presented to three of the board members presented to the Institute for Traffic Engineers. Really got no flack for the significant increase in fees that we had, but more important, they were concerned with customer service and how our licensing board will respond as a result of that.
Thank you for your report. I see no questions. The next time we'll think up some questions for you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure whether it's good to be first or last, but we're down to the last. So our State Board of Workers' Compensation, our last agency on the list.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thanks for having me this morning. My name is Ben Vinson. I'm the chairman and chief appellate judge at the State Board of Workers' Compensation. I'm happy to go last, and I'll try to keep it brief. If you'll look at your tracking sheet here, we're in section 49, starting on page 46, and we have no changes to the continuation budget. So the only thing that you'll see in there, line 369.1, .2, and .3 are just the changes for the $2,000 COLA and the DOAS and the merit system. And then if you'll drop down into the second part of our budget, line 370.1, 2, 3, and 4, and it's very similar, the $2,000 COLA and the DOAS and TeamWorks and the merit. And I'll just say on behalf of all of our employees in our agency, we really appreciate the support that you've given through the COLA last year and again this year. It means a lot and really helps us with retention and with recruiting. Those are the only changes that we have in our budget going into this year. I'm happy to answer any questions about the system of workers' compensation or our agency or anything else about the budget that you like to. That's all I have this morning.
Seeing no questions, good report.
All right, thank you.
I'll ask our committee members if you get a chance to digest kind of what we've done here this morning, if you got anything that you want to share with me and most importantly with Martha Grace, said please do so. We're going to try to keep the wheels turning and let me know what you see. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.